When I'm away traveling, people look me dead in the eye without pretense, without context or any real evidence, and they say, "So whereabouts in Australia are you from?" To which I say, "Do you know that Australia is the same distance from New Zealand that LA is from New York?" It's no joke, New Zealand is in the middle of nowhere, and I'm not from Australia, I'm from New Zealand. I love this island, and I want to share with you today 6 ways of getting around it, if you want to someday have a visit. This video should serve as the definitive guide to New Zealand's transport options. So, we're going to look at the standard modes of travel: car, bike, ferry, train, bus, and something else if you stick around. I'll be focusing on 2 main areas, one being Auckland, the most populated city, and Queenstown, the tourist hub of the country. So before we have a look at how to get around, I need to explain the topography of New Zealand. As I've done a few bike and road trips here, I know it can be a bit daunting as a tourist to figure out how to get to the beautiful spots. Why? Why is it daunting? Well, this place is covered in hills. Not the nice little ones like this one behind me. We have steep bluffs and enormous mountains pretty much all over the place. So there's a fault line all the way through New Zealand. So we have mountains here, 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 and here. New Zealand was formed on the fires of volcanic activity on this fault line and is home to 79 volcanoes, which is made for some serious mountains and lakes. Now, if you have a look at this map, you can see that the roads follow these tightly. There's a lot of bends and sharp turns. A big hurdle for New Zealand is the lack of a motorway. The Americans offered to build a highway from Auckland to Wellington in the 1950s if the Americans could put a military base in the country. The New Zealand government didn't sign on to that, so that's left us with this tremendously windy road through the center of the North Island. So if we're going to ride any of these roads, we're going to need a car. The best mode for someone with a limited amount of time who wants to travel a decent amount of the country. Some excellent places to rent cars would be Budget Cars NZ, Juicy, Avis, Hertz. The other option, of course, is to buy a car and then sell it once you're done. I was once part of this great chain when I bought my old van, Humphrey, a Hyundai H1, off my mate Logan. I roamed in it for a few months before selling it to 2 German tourists. This was a great way for them to save money, and if you're going to visit New Zealand for 3 to 6 months, you might want to do the same. I've tried to buy a car in Europe and America, and New Zealand is by far the easiest place. In terms of registering the car, it should come with a warrant of fitness and an annual registration, so just make sure that these are valid before you purchase. So if you bought the car for $4,000 and use it for 3 months, spending $1,000 on gas with optional insurance, you're up for a $5,000 bill. If you rented a car for 3 months at $30 a day and spent the same amount on fuel, then you're up for only a $4,000 bill. However, you can't get any of that back. You can sell the car you bought for a similar price. So it's up to you. Whichever route you take, you're in for a hell of a ride because New Zealand is packed with incredible beaches, fantastic rock formations, ancient forests, dank caves, and of course, mountains. Not to mention the folks. New Zealanders are open, warm, down to earth, and in my experience, always want to tell a story. Now, if you don't have the kind of cash we just talked about to secure a car for your trip, the next best bet to save you cash and see a lot is a little surprising: bikepacking. Bikepacking, of course, is just backpacking but on a bike. Now, to get the most of this kind of travel, let's say you fly into Queenstown International Airport with a bike. You can actually put them on your plane as part of a luggage allowance. Or you can rent a bike for $30 a day with discounts for longer trips. Or you can buy a new or second-hand bike for about $200 to $500 either from Trade Me or Bikeaholic on George Road, Queenstown. Then you can cycle to Mount Cook, Lake Tekapo, Wanaka, and the Otago Plains in a couple of days, and you can take your time camping in some of the most serene, beautiful places on the planet. Bikepacking is one of the cheaper options, giving you ultimate freedom to roam any kind of trail, road, railway. You can even put your bike on a ferry or even a fishing boat. As long as you're off the highways, New Zealand is bikepacking friendly with hundreds of campsites and freedom camping spots. You might think that you need to be an experienced cyclist to undertake this kind of trip. You will find that the barrier to entry with bikepacking is pretty low. There's no rush, you can take your time, and after a few days of riding, you'll find your endurance has increased I'm not going to blame you though. If you're not too keen on the bikepacking, you can catch the intercity bus. Now, this system is pretty well connected in terms of the major towns, but unlike Europe, it really falls short on its last mile capability. Last mile capability, that's just the shorter part of the journey after the main transit. For example, it's easy to get a bus from Auckland to Wellington, but once you're in the city, you'll have to rely on other options to get that last mile. Now, as somebody who sold their car 6 years ago, I found this to be pretty tricky. Most of the national parks, regional reserves, and the smaller towns have no public transport. So I've opted for bikepacking, Uber, the bus, and borrowing my mates' cars. So maybe you don't want to fuss with all of that admin and you just want to stay in Auckland or Queenstown. So let's have a look at what Auckland has to offer. Auckland is the biggest city in the country and is located here at the top of Te Akea Maui, the North Island. It's at the junction of the Manukau Harbour and the Hauraki Gulf. Now holding 1.7 million people, it is the centre for commerce, beaches, and good vibes. One unique selling point of the City of Sails, as they call it, is the boats. You can take ferries from the CBD to 5 incredibly beautiful islands: Tiritiri Matangi, Waiheke, Kauau, Rangitoto, and Mototapu. You can also visit Gulf Harbour and the Coromandel Peninsulas as well. If you go on any of these incredible journeys, then you'll find these islands are clean, pristine, and full of friendly locals. The ferry's going to cost you $30 to $90 return, and the hub for sailing is the Auckland Ferry Building, built in 1912. It's right at the front of the city. Now, these islands are packed with some seriously cool treasures. The takahe on Tiritiri Matangi is this beautiful blue curious bird that will be more than happy to interrupt your picnic. And then on Kauau Island, you might be lucky enough to see the tuatara, which is older than the dinosaurs. These islands are incredible. If you go camping or just for the day, take a backpack and go for a hike. You will not regret it. Now, if you want to catch a ferry or bus in Auckland, you'll have to grab yourself one of these, a hop card. You can go to pretty much any dairy, that's just a corner store, and pick one up for $10. Pop on some funds and you'll be set to catch any of these ferries, as well as the buses and trains inside Auckland. Now, if you want to go and visit the nation's capital and you've got a bit of time, there is a train. Just the one train though. A scenic locomotive from Auckland to Wellington. The 11-hour train costs $89 and will take you all the way from Auckland to Wellington, stopping at Hamilton, the third largest town in the North Island, then to the Waitomo glowworm caves, National Park with the Great Ruapehu and Ngāharoe Mountains, the winter sports town Oakuni, and finally to Wellington. Now, when you get to Wellington, be sure to visit Te Papa, the Museum of New Zealand, the Botanical Gardens, and maybe do the Weta Workshop tour. The folks that did the special effects for Lord of the Rings, Thor Ragnarok, and Avatar. So now you've got a pretty good understanding of how to get around New Zealand. But what if you wanted to do something really Kiwi, something properly unique? Well, you could traverse Te Aoetearoa, the Long Walk. What's that, Connor? Well, it's a 3,000 kilometer track that goes from Cape Reinga in the north to Bluff in the south. It takes 4 months to walk with your feet. Walking the length of New Zealand, the track passes through cities and can see you on the road for a week without seeing a soul. There's not actually much point me explaining it though, because there's somebody at Bright Trip who's walked the whole way. Eleanor has, and she's got courses on how to do adventure filmmaking from Te Aotearoa and from the Pacific Crest Trail. So, Command T, Control T, head on over to brighttrip.com and check all of that out. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Take it easy.